Because if a country can't defend itself, it doesn't matter what its policies are. It doesn't matter at all. You know, our coal, our oil, natural gas, and our uranium reserves are probably the largest in the world. Certainly per capita, we are the richest nation in the world. The UN has said so itself. Excluding tourists, there are 2.5 million migrants in the country on temporary visas. That's around about 1.5 million houses that we need just for them. And that's far too many people for our roads, our hospitals, and the number of houses we have. Far too many. And what's happening is that good people, working families, I should calm down, because working families, I've visited them in every major provincial city in this state. Working families, mothers and fathers are going home to their children, seeing if they're still in the car where they'll sleep tonight.
Hello and welcome to Spectator TV Australia. I am your host, online editor Alexandra Marshall, and today we are joined by Queensland Senator Malcolm Roberts. Senator, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on being back on air with Spectator TV.
Thank you so much, Senator. And also a big congratulations to you because you have just been re-elected to the Senate. Are you excited about being the de facto opposition this time around?
Well, first of all, thank you to the many people who supported me, and thanks for the vote of confidence, because it's actually the third time I've been elected to the Senate and the second time I've been re-elected, so I'm very, very pleased with that. We are the de facto opposition because Liberal and Labor have basically introduced the same policies over the last, since 1975, particularly since John Howard, who started the Liberal Labor Uni Party. What's happened, Alexandra, is that the Liberal Party introduces every major climate and energy policy, for example, and the most destructive housing and immigration policies. They're the ones who put in Big Australia. And the Labor Party has just come in and ramped it up. So One Nation is the only elected party that's capable of dealing with reality. You know, we focus on the data, the hard facts, and the cruel facts. We don't run away from them, and we keep reminding them. We're the only party that'll stick up and say the truth. And in that sense, we've always been the true opposition.
Well, I've been hearing a lot of chatter about the endless silence from the coalition. The election was a while ago, and yet we hear nothing from them when major world events happen. So I'm guessing One Nation is looking forward to having policies as well as opinions.
Well, we've had the best policies, I can honestly say. Most of them came out of my office, thanks to the staff in our office. But we've had the best policies I have ever seen of any political party at any time in Australian history.
Well, Senator, the world did change over the weekend with President Donald Trump taking a preemptive strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, regardless of what anybody thinks about this or what will happen next, has home defence of Australia become a critical policy for when you return to Canberra?
It has been since we've been in Canberra, Alexandra, and yes, it will be when we return to Canberra. Because if a country can't defend itself, it doesn't matter what its policies are. It doesn't matter at all. The Chinese Communist Party just sent warships down here. They circled our country. We didn't have one of our own warships tailing them when they were starting to do firing practice. You know, we are exporting our coal to China to build steel for arming itself and making weapons. We can't use the coal here. Our steel industry is shutting down because of the high energy costs. We are crippling ourselves, and people are just laughing at us.
Well, Senator, there's been a lot of criticism of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and indeed our Foreign Minister Penny Wong regarding what's going on the global stage. Now, particularly Anthony Albanese's performance at the G7. But when we talk about what's going on there, has Australia's position on the world stage been damaged by the way Labor has approached our situation in the world? And let's face it, one of our strongest allies, which is the United States.
Yes, unquestionably. Every country, including Australia, benefits when we have a good reputation. Everyone, after all, is usually happy to meet an Aussie overseas, travelling. And, you know, I know that when I was working and studying and travelling across the United States for a total of about 5 years and 2 visits, people love to hear Australians. Oh, I love your accent. But then they love the way we are so similar to Americans in our lifestyle and our values. They love to meet Australians. They're laughing at us. When they look closely, when people overseas look closely at what we're doing, they just laugh and ask if we're serious about what's going on in this country. We're crippling our manufacturing, crippling our energy sector. And countries are saying, haven't you learned anything from Spain? Haven't you learned anything from Germany? Haven't you learned anything from the Europeans destroying? Haven't you learned anything about Britain destroying itself? Haven't you learned anything from Donald Trump saying no more solar and wind? I mean, these, our coal, our oil, natural gas, and our uranium reserves are probably the largest in the world. Certainly per capita, we are the richest nation in the world. The UN has said so itself. And I accuse them of lying, but they've still got that fact right. Yet our power costs are sky high because we only export it. We can't use it here.
Well, while there is a silence from most of our elected officials, which is kind of concerning given the state of the world, One Nation leader Pauline Hanson did release a statement. Now, in that statement, she says, and I'm going to quote and read from this is directed toward Anthony Albanese, "Your government's position continues to be inadequate against the danger of radical Islam in Australia, which puts the lives of citizens at risk." Now, that is what Pauline Hanson has said, and she is saying this in relation to Australia's immigration policy and calling for there to be no more visas issued to Iranians at this point in time when there is a risk of a regime change and more extreme ideological views coming into the country. Senator, there's also a mass migration disaster taking place in the cities around Australia right now. Would you like to see migration and immigration, the Prime Minister put a tighter hold and control on that, particularly given the geopolitical climate we are in right now?
Yes, that's a very simple answer to give. Yes. What's more, Alexandra, we have asked him for that, and he's given us that response. But he broke it and he lied about it straight afterwards. We asked him after his first year in office, he imported 518,000 new immigrants, net migration, 518,000, over 500,000. And then when we exposed that and told him how much damage it was doing, we've got people homeless from every provincial city in this state of ours. We should be the richest in the world. We've got tens of thousands of people homeless. You don't have to go far to see it. And when we raised that, he said, okay, well, we'll make sure immigration is lower the following year. It was bloody higher. We've always discussed issues, Alexandra, with the quality and quantity of immigration. The number of people and the type and quality of people in terms of their ability to contribute straight away. He's bringing in people that, what are the figures now? 0.6% have construction experience and will go into housing. They're supposed to build houses for the other 99.4%. Excluding tourists, there are 2.5 million migrants in the country on temporary visas. That's around about 1.5 million houses that we need just for them. And that's far too many people for our roads, our hospitals, and the number of houses we have. Far too many. And what's happening is that good people, working families, I should calm down, because working families, I've visited them in every major provincial city in this state. Working families, mothers and fathers, are going home to their children, seeing if they're still in the car where they'll sleep tonight. Where do they go to the toilet? Where do they shower? This is abhorrent. Good working families.
And even in city suburbs, we would not expect to see it, Senator. I myself have personally stood in line at house inspections with over 60 people, and there's so little hope for people trying to find somewhere to live, and everywhere you do find is ridiculously expensive for what is essentially a shoebox. But Senator, I want to talk.
Alexandra, it's also another fact that the reason immigration is so high is to hide the fact that we're in a per capita recession, which is the real measure of a recession. So we are in a per capita recession, which is a recession. But the definition of a recession, as you know just as well as I do, is 2 quarters of negative growth overall in the economy. And they've stayed out of that by inflating the economy with people, inflating demand, raising our gross domestic product. So it's barely over zero. And that way they stay out of officially being called a recession. And that's what they're doing. They don't care how many people are homeless, how many people are living in misery, how many people are living with threats of violence over their heads in our country, because they just want to make sure that they're not officially classified as the Treasurer and Prime Minister who brought upon us the recession. And Scott Morrison needs to be held partly accountable for that too.
So strange that socialists are lacking empathy, Senator, but that does appear to be the case. Now, look, Domestic security and national security are intrinsically linked with energy security and mineral security. That is
Yep.
how we protect our grid, how we create energy, and how we manage our natural resources, which are, of course, finite. Now, under the previous governments of both coalition and Labor, Australia has been outsourcing not only all of our coal and oil and gas, which we sell off into other countries, particularly China, but our energy grid, which is becoming increasingly reliant on foreign powers to function. And not only that, it's becoming more and more fragile. If you were given the absolute power, Senator, in Canberra, and you could make a change to Australia's energy condition, what would you like to see happen as soon as possible?
First of all, the message that you just said needs to be articulated across the country. We need to have energy. Energy has been on a relentless downward trend. Energy price has been on a relentless downward trend in real terms from about 1850 to now. Until about 1996 and the start of the Howard government, when that was artificially increased. The important point is that decreasing costs of energy in real terms are the powerhouse that drives human progress. So what happened with John Howard coming in with his renewable energy targets, stealing farmers' property rights, national electricity market, putting in place the first policy for a carbon dioxide tax? Yes, Liberals were the first to have that policy. What he did was he reversed human progress and made it more expensive for energy. Now, the important thing in that is that manufacturing over the last few decades, the number one cost factor in manufacturing is energy prices. The lower your energy price, the lower your manufacturing costs. What we have done is artificially inflated, raised the cost of energy. We've destroyed our manufacturing, and guess where it's going? It's going to China. First of all, we're subsidising the Chinese to make solar panels and wind turbines. We're subsidising them to import them. We're subsidising to transport them. We're subsidising them to erect them. We're subsidising them to run them. We're subsidising after 15 years for them to replace the damn things, when a coal-fired power station lasts 60 years at least. And so what we're doing, tacking that subsidy onto our electricity costs, is driving the cost of electricity to make it unaffordable for manufacturing. So our manufacturers go to China, and manufacturing jobs go to China. Our electricity becomes much more expensive. We're becoming a third world country in the blink of an eye, and nobody seems to be caring about it. So it's very simple. If we want Australia to win, we ditch net zero. We use the coal, the oil, the gas, and the uranium reserves in Australia for Australians. China is using our coal to cheaply power its manufacturing industry. It'll cripple our manufacturing. It's crippling our farmers. During a drought, the last drought we had, farmers in North Queensland, they personally told me, farmers in Central Queensland and farmers in Southern Queensland did not plant fodder crops because the cost of pumping water was too high. In a drought, no fodder crops? This is insane.
It's often difficult to explain to the younger generation exactly what the rising price of energy is impacting in their lives. One great way that I've found is to turn the lights off or turn the power off and see how many things would no longer work. In a society, almost nothing will work without energy, and that's everything which this green tax is being added to. But the Nationals are being sent down a little rabbit hole about trying to work out how much net zero will cost. Personally, I think they've been sent on a bit of busy work by the Liberals who don't really want to talk about net zero. But as you indicated, I think AI has done a few calculations and it thinks that net zero will cost Australia 9 trillion or something in that order to fully maintain and change our grid. But that does not include losses to businesses. It does not include replacing the grid every 15 years when everything breaks. That's a conservative estimate. But my question is, could the real cost of net zero, Senator, be our national security?
Definitely is. Undoubtedly it is. And by the way, on the cost estimates for net zero, Peter Dutton said the coalition has estimated the cost of $1.3 trillion. An independent study from 3 universities in this country estimated 1.5 trillion. Bloomberg, 1.9 trillion. And as you said, when you include the costs to jobs, businesses, replacing the grid every 15 years, it's 9 trillion. That was developed by AI, which is just taking some of the facts that are freely available. The cost to Australia, though, is national security. $9 trillion is how much capital will be needed in the next 35 years, according to Net Zero. The most comprehensive study, according to Net Zero Australia, the most comprehensive study to date by the University of Melbourne, the University of Queensland, and Princeton in America. That's $260 billion a year, Alexandra. That gets tacked onto our electricity costs and our taxation. Australia's entire military budget is $56 billion. That's 0.6% of the costs of net zero. Now, part of net zero is that we can't use coal and make steel in Australia. You can't make steel using the coal that we have, the best coking coal, the best steel grade coal in the world, and Australia is shipping that to China, where they're building warships with it and munitions with it. We can't use it here. I mean, people know that that's an absolute insanity. The true cost to our country and our way of life, Australians' way of life, standard of living, cost of living, affordability, lifestyle, safety, security, our children's future, everything is being decimated. Jobs, lifestyle, out the door, because Liberal Nationals, which introduced this, and Labor Party, which ramped it up in each occasion, are crippling this country. And the Nationals, I believe that some of the Nationals are genuinely afraid of net zero. Some of them who are afraid of net zero and want it to stop actually advocated for us to cut carbon dioxide. So they're culpable in some instances. But they've woken up because One Nation has put the pressure to them. We're the only party that's calling out net zero as insanity. The only party that's saying it's detrimental to our health of our country. But we're the only ones actually opposed to it. And what they're trying to do is deceptive, but we'll call them out on it.
It's quite extraordinary that Jim Chalmers and Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese and the whole Labor kit and caboodle are going to war against carbon, which is the fundamental building block of life, and they have a defence budget to match, which is, of course, the spending on renewable energy. It is an extraordinary amount of money being wasted on a war that does not exist anywhere except in their own UN-driven fantasy world. But you did touch on a topic there before, Senator, which was about the resources that Australia has, these precious resources. Now, we often hear that Australia's economy runs on the back of the mining industry. Now, that is true. But when the world enters a dangerous geopolitical footing, the basic resources that a country possesses are worth more than what they can be exported as. Now, given this, should Australia be more careful about how much of our limited resources we are shipping to places like China on the cheap instead of getting the maximum value out of these resources? Do we need to be more careful about how we manage lithium, iron, silicon, coal, oil, gas, gold, everything?
Copper, silver, zinc, lead. Yes, we should be more careful. Number one, we should get more money for it. That we are the world's third largest exporter of natural gas. Qatar is the second largest, I believe, and the United States is the largest. We get bugger all for it. Our coal, we get bugger all for that. Except in Queensland now, we get massive royalties, but we're still not using them properly. We're still allowing the export of valuable coking coal, and that's fine. But we need to make sure we have access to it here and have a steel industry that can be supported. That's why we pushed Capricorn Steel, building a transcontinental railway line in the north of Australia, just above the Tropic of Capricorn, to have steel mills in the iron ore and have steel mills in the west and have steel mills in the coking coal mines in the east, and ship the coal west and the iron ore east. We need to build an iron ore, we need to think strategically and rebuild our iron ore industry. We can be, and there are the customers for this and hard investors looking at this, including Australian investors, we need to be the world's largest producers of steel and iron and the best quality, and that is easily achieved with the proposals we are saying. We have got so much coal, so much iron ore, so much gas, so much uranium, and we look like we could be one of the world's largest producers of rare earth metals. But these and other metals we need to be considering strategically and to think long-term for our country. You know, we have enough resources to last our country for thousands of years, but not if we let other countries plunder it while getting none of the benefit. We need to export, we need to identify the best resources for ourselves, and we need to get a fair price for our exports. You know, Why would Australia want to invade? Why would China want to invade Australia when they already own our ports, mines, houses, and water, and some of our electricity networks? What's left for them to take? They've been buying it. We should use our resources for ourselves first and export what remains.
And finally, Senator, the One Nation has been making recommendations about defence honours and the Awards Appeals Tribunal, and it says here you would like to review all nominations for Distinguished Service Crosses and medals to senior officers between 1991 and 2012, among a whole other raft of recommendations. This is a very interesting series of ideas that One Nation has. What is the purpose and significance behind One Nation's recommendations in this field?
Well, it's really simple. When it comes to defence, the critical foundation of our defence strategy is the quality of our people. And that has been driven by mateship. That is being eroded, Alexandra. We had a proud defence force who no longer have the high morale they had. And that has been crippled by the lack of accountability in the top brass. They have been flagrantly abusing their privileges, their titles, the honours and awards system, and their positions. We have the head of the Australian Defence Force, the chief of the Defence Forces. He is now paid 3 times what the American equivalent is paid. The American equivalent has tens of thousands of many times more servicemen and women, has nuclear capable ships, planes. He has so many weapons and he can do so much damage, and yet he's paid 1/3 what our Chief of Defence Forces is. This is ridiculous. We are overpaying our senior officers. We're giving them far too much leniency. They're not being held accountable. They are destroying the morale. And, you know, we plan, the government plans to pay hundreds of billions of dollars for equipment like AUKUS submarines, the Hunter-class frigates, combat reconnaissance vehicles, F-35 jets. What the hell can they do without good morale amongst the people who fly them and ship them and pilot them and arm them? The retention crisis now is from low morale, so we don't have people to drive that fancy equipment. We've got a contractor on over $1 billion income payment that we are outsourcing to recruit. Why the hell should we do that? Under them, the recruit retention has gone down. Under them, the recruit intake has gone down. We won't have anyone to drive that fancy equipment. And when we do put people in that equipment, how the hell can we ensure they have high morale when they're being gutted by the inconsistencies, the hypocrisy, and the deceit of the top brass? The ADF people are leaving because they don't feel valued. And that's what my medals inquiry looked at. There's a 2-tier system in the Defence Force at this moment, and that needs to be addressed if we want people to win. The overarching thing about Australian leadership is that people in Australia will follow good leaders. If they're not good leaders, they will crucify them. And what we're heading for here is real embarrassment for Australia's Defence Force, because we are not keeping up with the standards in the Australian military, and that is due solely and entirely to 2 groups of people: the top brass in our country and the Liberal and Labor Uni Party defence ministers and bureaucrats that are just shitting on basically the soldiers. And we need to stop that. The soldiers, the airmen, and the Navy sailors. We need to stop that. Need to call a spade and get on with fixing the Defence Force morale and the Defence Force strategy.
Well, Senator, there has never been a more important time in our modern history for Australia's Defence Forces to feel as if they are being looked after, particularly the young men and women who are on the ground defending Australia's interests here at home and abroad. So I'd like to thank you very much, Senator Malcolm Roberts, for joining us here today on Spectator TV.
You're welcome. Keep up the good work, Alexandra.